The Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers draft this year was somewhat of a confusing one. You understood that they were going into the first round and they were looking to address their defense. But besides the first round, the Steelers really didn't address their biggest need, defense. They should have just went into this draft and drafted a ton of defense. But instead in this draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers go in a confusing way, and they go about picking their team with a receiver in the second round, a third-round quarterback pick, offensive tackle, a tight end. So that ends up being only 1, 2, 3 of their picks, of their 7 picks in this year's draft, were defensive players. And to me, the Pittsburgh Steelers, again, their biggest need was defense. They should have just went defense, and addressed the depth of the defense and added playmakers to their defense. But instead, they go second round, James Washington to replace and add a slot receiver to this offense. You get a slot receiver with Antonio Brown and Juju in the inside. These 3 players can move around everywhere, but I feel like Washington will be best suited in the slot. And really, you replace Martavis Bryant there. So are you getting better? I mean, maybe in the future, Washington, the Steelers are great with drafting receivers. I like Washington. He's a good player. But ultimately this year, you're not getting much better for a team that's looking to win right away. Terrell Edmunds, free safety, he's not really going to contribute right away. He still has a long way to go. Very athletic, though, has a high upside. But I don't know. Was this the biggest need for your team? I really felt like inside linebacker was a bigger need. I felt like you could have added a corner in this year's draft. There was a lot of good ones. Even another pass rusher. I mean, Edmonds, to me, at free safety, good player, could be good in the future. But again, a team that's looking to win right now, he's probably the third safety at best on the Steelers. You added a Morgan Burnett. Edmonds, hopefully, though, could help them address the need of covering tight ends, which would be nice. Then you look at Mason Rudolph in the third round. Mason Rudolph, I don't like very much. I don't think he's a very good quarterback. I thought he was a system quarterback in college. I think he's going to be the very same. I think he'll be a backup, and he'll just be along the list of guys like Josh Dobbs, who you drafted last year, which is another reason why this pick doesn't make sense. 2 third-round picks at quarterback back-to-back when Ben Roethlisberger has stated he wants to play for another 5 years. I understand he's talked about retiring, but, help him win. Help him win now. I understand he came out and he was a little jerk about it, but still, he's kind of right. I mean, you need to help your defense. Your offense will be fine. You have Ben. Bell's back for another year. Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. You have a lot of playmakers. You have a good offensive line. There's no problem on your offense. You need to help your defense. And by spending a third-round pick on Mason Rudolph, it just doesn't make too much sense to me. Then in the third round, you go for an offensive tackle. I understand you lost one of your depth tackles this year in Hubbard, but I still think that wasn't a huge need. You could have went with a corner. You could have went with an inside linebacker. You could have went with a defensive player. But instead, you go with a tackle, which I don't think makes a ton of sense. And then you go in the 5th round, another safety who's probably not going to get on the field. Then you have Jalen Samuels at tight end. Sure, he's small though. Like he's 5'11" and he's a tight end. That's kind of weird. He's shifty though with the ball in his hands. Maybe he could be, a fullback tight end hybrid on this offense and bring something in that regard. But is that what you really needed? Just add depth to your defense. That's the biggest thing with this Steelers draft that they didn't do, is just add defensive players. In the 7th round, they finally get a defensive tackle in Joshua Frazier, but again, that was one of the least positions of need. You already have Tuitt in there, and you have Hayward in there along the front 3 of your 3-4 defense. So I don't know. The Steelers just missed the boat for me in terms of hitting needs that they really needed to in this year's draft. So while I think Terrell Edmunds might develop into being a decent safety in the future, he's not going to help the team right away. They didn't walk away with any starters in this year's draft, and that's a concerning thing. Mason Rudolph, to me, is not very good. James Washington might be good, but he's another receiver, which I don't know. Do you need another receiver? So I don't know. Steelers, just a confusing draft. I could see why some people could like it, but I I just think that they need a defense, and they continue to just not help their defense with adding more talent through the draft.